This morning here on Jersey Magazine, we are joined by Mike Ham from Greetings from the Garden State. But before we start, congratulations are in order. Michael, take two. This morning here on Jersey Magazine, Mike Ham from Greetings from the Garden State joins us. But before we get into our topic, I understand, Mike, that congratulations are in order.
That's right, Jim. Yesterday, me and my beautiful now fiance got engaged. It was very spur of the moment, very impromptu. The moment struck and pulled the trigger, and thank God she said yes. So we're all very excited.
And how long have you guys been together?
So a little over a year and a half, about a year and 9 months, and been living together now since the beginning of January. We have the dog, we have everything, so it just kind of seems like the next step. But there, for all the crazy things, and you kind of get a glimpse behind the curtain a little bit with all the stuff that I do and all my crazy, wacky ideas. There's literally no one on this planet that is more supportive of all the stuff that I do, and you got to lock that up for sure.
So she knows exactly what she's getting into.
100%. Yes. There is no going back now. She knows what she's getting into, and she's along for the ride, which is so great.
You mentioned that you said, thankfully, your fiance said yes. That was kind of how I asked my wife when we got engaged. I handed her the box with the ring in it and said, please say yes. I was a little nervous, Mike.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was nervous too, and I certainly had no plan. I was actually just like, I'll make a long story really fast, but I was down in Asbury Park for most of the day because we're working on an event down there for November, and basically put it in my backpack yesterday morning because I just woke up with that feeling, and I had the ring for about a week. I woke up with the feeling. We had like a really great dinner the night before. We were just really clicking on all cylinders for sure. And then got home. We were hanging out. We just started chatting, and at one point she kind of gave me the "you like that sandwich? Maybe just propose to me" kind of thing. And I was like, "You want me to?" And she said yes. And I just reached down my backpack, pulled it out, and blew her away. So it was very us for sure. It definitely we were very happy, but obviously I had no real plan. We just did it. We just do stuff.
Well, that's a great story nonetheless. Mike, for listeners who are new to Greetings from the Garden State, tell us about it. Where'd you get the idea from, and what were your goals when you set out with it?
Sure. So, greetings from the Garden State. Our tagline is we celebrate the people, places, and stories that are shaping New Jersey. So, we basically travel the state. We connect with local business owners, people that run nonprofits, other interesting people that have been on the Olympics, on The Voice, on Top Chef, on Survivor, different things like that. We've worked with the New Jersey Devils in the Prudential Center in the World Cup, which is coming up in 2026. And the idea kind of stemmed from I had been podcasting for, I think at that point, a couple of years, and was doing all virtual because it started around COVID. Obviously, all the episodes that I was doing were on Zoom and all that. And I was like, I did one in-person interview at my buddy's studio down in Trenton, fell in love with doing an in-person interaction type thing, and put together this concept for a show where I had no money for a studio. I basically put together a little travel setup of mics and cameras and stuff. And cameras, I mean cell phones, and like old cell phones that I had, and just started basically traveling around New Jersey and have been able to connect with some really cool people all around the state, from as far south as Wildwood, as far north as Mahwah and Montague, depending on which way north you want to go, and really everywhere in between. So it's been quite a ride, and that's kind of the crux of the show. It's almost 3 years old now. It'll be 3 years old on October 18th of this year, which is kind of crazy to think that we've been doing it for that long.
And on this latest episode, I know you're focusing on a really cool local band. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so the Azures are somewhat new to the scene in New Jersey music, especially New Jersey indie music. They kind of popped on about 2 years ago, and they got a really interesting sound. I think that you listened to them a little bit, very like psychedelic rock, punk, sort of bluesy vibe. Um, we had been kind of going back and forth for a while. I've been listening to some of their stuff, like "Come On Down" is a song that I listen to quite a bit. And we've been trying to put something on the calendar for a while. We finally got it because I was in that area, in the Toms River area, and put it together, and they're just like a really interesting group. They just released their first album earlier this year. They did their first tour earlier this year. So it's definitely a band that's kind of on the rise here in the state.
The lead singer Gia Rose is
Yeah.
very, very captivating, and her combination of spoken word and singing reminds me a little bit of Jim Morrison and the Doors.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's definitely the vibe that I get as well. And the story, her story is she started out as a model out of school, out of like high school and stuff, and then was always writing poetry. And a lot of the songs that they play are basically poems that she's written, and they kind of repurpose those into songs, and they all kind of vibe off the words and what become lyrics and all that. And just kind of like that. I forgot the name of the song off the top of my head, but there's one song that starts with like like a spoken word. It kind of sounds like an incantation almost at the very beginning. And then it kind of breaks into the song, and it's just like different. Like you don't always hear that kind of sound, like everyone's kind of chasing something different. And I think that this is just a very organic kind of thing that they've found for themselves.
Also, I hear a little bit of maybe some Janis Joplin or Grace Slick, but the other artists that they remind me of, and especially Gia's approach, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not, Gil Scott Heron, who was out of Chicago, like a jazz poet, who
Yeah.
did some remarkable recordings like The Revolution Will Not Be Televised,
Yeah.
Winter in America, The Bottle, We Almost Lost Detroit. Very, very similar vibe, kind of cool, a little bit like you said, psychedelic.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, but definitely like it's really interesting just kind of how the band got put together. I mean, Eric, who plays drums in the band, his father owns Secret Guitars, which is a music shop down in Tom's River, and that's where they record. And one day, Gia and Ashton walked in, and they were like, "We want to start a band. Do you know anybody that's looking to start a band?" And Eric said yes. And then eventually, they had a bass player. They've since gone to a new bass player. And yeah, and that's kind of like how it started. Like it's as about as organic as it possibly can get. And they do a lot of their rehearsals, their recordings inside that music shop after hours, late at night. So we were in there till about 10 o'clock at night. And at the end of the episode, we were able to do like a quick we're still putting together the actual video of it, but an acoustic set of one of their songs that's coming out this fall, which was really cool and kind of a cool experience to kind of watch it all kind of happen organically because they had never really rehearsed it all that much. They just were like, "Would you mind recording this?" And I said yes. And sometimes that's the coolest stuff to do.
I noticed they also played the Stone Pony in Asbury Park. They're part of this whole music scene that, along with the LGBTQ community, music and them, they've saved Asbury Park for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that is no matter how much they build in Asbury Park, like that is always going to be the root of why people want to live there. Obviously, like the beach is there and there's history, but like the music and the culture and the art and everything that's what makes that place super special. And them kind of being able to be involved in that whole scene now is really cool. And I think like different, I think you and I have talked about this doing this spot every week, kind of having an eclectic type of different bands and things in that area and not just like, oh, it's like the Bruce Springsteen sound or the Southside Johnny sound, which obviously is successful, but having different vibes and different people and different artists and different approaches in that scene, I think is super important to continuing to keep that spirit going and alive and growing.
And you can check them out, the Azures. It's part of this week's segment on greetings from thegardenstate.com. Mike Ham, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.